Chapter 9. The sun had dipped with the late afternoon into the evening, and finally into the first suggestions of twilight. The air had cooled some, which prompted him to pull the dark cloak around his shoulders. He could have gone inside, he knew. Pura would have only yelled at him if he interrupted her work. Yet he remained. He sat in the grass, his back towards an old tree. Apples again, he had noted with a wry smile. Hyrule certainly had plenty of apple trees. Any mirth he found in his thought was quickly lost, however, as he gazed toward a frozen mountain in the distance. He watched as clouds floated through the sky, gathering around its peak, and then dispersed as the day wore on. Part of Link itched to look at the photographs on the Sheikah slate, to see the small glimpses into the life he'd had before everything had gone to ruin. At the same time, he was inordinately grateful to Pura for taking the cursed thing from him. Had he been holding it now, he knew that he would have found the photo of Princess Zelda again, beautiful in her simplicity. And he would have... what? He didn't know. A noise from behind him first alerted him to Pura's presence. A strange sound that Link seemed to recall hearing, as he and Pura had teleported back onto the shrine's base earlier. He frowned and looked around the base of the tree, surprised to see a small person being formed of glowing blue particles on a familiar-looking circular stone base in front of the ancient tech lab. How had he not noticed that before? The particles took the shape of a little girl with a strange owl-faced bow, solidified, and then flashed with bright light. "Aha!" Pura cried, leaping into the air with excitement. I did it! She seemed to do a little dance for a few seconds before she noticed him watching. She grinned brightly and laughed happily, running over to him. "Linky, did you see that?" Link stood from his spot on the ground, looking at her in confusion. How did you... I just teleported from here to the top of the tower on the Great Plateau, and then back." He noticed that she was holding his Sheikah slate in her hands, and he glanced from it to her face. "The Sheikah slate can do that?" "It can now." She laughed again, shrill and slightly manic. "That was the only rune I was still having trouble with before we went to the shrine. But when we teleported back, it gave me an idea. So I made some adjustments and wham! Instant transportation." How? "Well, I am the world's top-tier scientist when it comes to ancient technology." She seemed to stand a little taller at this, and Link noticed, with some chagrin, that she was actually standing on her toes to do so. "And Robbie can just deal with it. I tried teleporting over to see him, but it seems that the Sheikah slate only can visit places that it remembers being to recently." "And it can go anywhere?" "No, just places it's been recently. I mean anywhere that it's been recently." "Well, no." She shook her head and turned the Sheikah slate to face Link, where he saw a map of Hyrule. Several new icons had been placed on the map, each of which was a bright Sheikah blue color. "You see, that's why I was having so many problems with it before. I was trying to tune it to transport me to any place I wanted. Then I thought about how we arrived back on the circle, in front of the shrine, and I thought, wait, Pura, what if the shrines and towers were used for teleportation points too? And so I made some adjustments and tested it. And it worked." Link stared at her, dumbfounded, but aware of the breakthrough that this must have been for her. Not to mention the incredible boon it could be on his own journey, if it worked the way he hoped. "So I could use that to teleport to any of the Sheikah shrines or towers I find. Can I teleport with my horse?" "Linky, you're probably pretty lucky that it doesn't just teleport your hands, much less a whole horse. I really wouldn't even recommend trying it." Pura wrinkled her nose and shook her head. His heart dropped somewhat, his hopes of being able to flit all over the country with ease dashed. Right now, It is only going to work for just you, honey. Maybe with some more time. She considered this for a moment, but then shook her head, her expression growing more serious. But no, I can't keep you here any longer than I need to. I have the Sheikah slate that I made for myself. It isn't nearly as amazing as yours, but I think I can get the teleportation rune working on it too, now that I know better how it works. But I could use it to teleport back here anytime, though. How can you use it to transport to your lab? Click, snappity, snap. See that circle on the ground there? She pointed to the spot she had appeared. That's why I built my lab here. I actually think that the ancient Sheikah were planning on building a shrine here, but never finished it. I recognized it when I first saw it, since I had already seen some shrines by then, so I built my lab here. It seemed right at the time, and now I'm especially glad I did it. Just think, when I get it working on my slate, I'm never going to have to walk back up that hill again. Link gave her an honest smile and rubbed the back of his neck. I can see that being useful, I suppose. You suppose, Pura snorted. All you can think of is how it will be useful in battle, I bet. Well, now that she mentions it, you're going to have to use it to come back and visit me. Her expression had grown serious again. I need to keep researching your Sheikah slate to make sure I get mine just right, and... Pura's cheeks flushed slightly, and she clasped her hands behind her back, digging her toes into the grass. It's good having you back. Well, you're kind of fun for an old stick in the mud. A stick in the... At least that's what you used to be. Oh. She was talking about his former self then. His mood immediately began to sour again. Now, come on. Simon has some stew cooking, and I made sure he made enough for you too. That did improve Link's mood some, and he followed her around the lab, to the other door that led into the much cozier section of the house, where it was warm, and the smell of beef and vegetable stew filled the air. It was some time later that Pura and Link walked back outside. He approached his horse, placing a handful of additional supplies that Simon had given to him into Spirit's packs. The horse seemed eager to get moving again, and he nickered impatiently. Link grasped the saddle and pulled himself up onto it. Linky? Pura looked up at him, that strange, serious expression on her face again. He looked down at her, eyes meeting hers. I know that you're probably a little overwhelmed right now, but I think you can do it. He gave her the smallest of smiles, though he didn't truly feel it in his heart. First Roem, then Impa, Telma, and now Pura. So many of them seemed confident in him. So why wasn't he able to feel the same confidence? And we'll help you. Me and Impa and Robbie too. Once we tell him you're back. Impa might have already done it. Link felt a sudden surge of gratitude for the woman standing beneath him, and he gripped Spirit's rein tightly in order to avoid showing the emotions. It wouldn't do for Pura to see him growing emotional over such a simple statement. But really, he was grateful. Just hearing that someone else wanted to help him was something that he truly needed to hear right then. Pura, you haven't... Link cleared his throat, blinking rapidly. You keep mentioning Robbie. Who is he? I don't remember. Oh, let me see your Sheikah slate. Link handed it down to her, and her fingers danced across the screen. She handed it back to him a moment later, and he saw that the screen was showing a photograph. 3 people were standing arm in arm in it. Link immediately recognized the woman in the middle, with her round face and blonde hair. Princess Zelda stood in the photo, her blonde hair flowing down her back, like the previous photo he'd seen, though now she had a braid that seemed to form a crown atop her head as well. She wasn't wearing the white dress this time, but wore a blue blouse with golden trim, a white bodice, and a pair of brown, tight-fitting trousers. She was smiling much more brightly in this photograph than the others were. At once he felt that pang in his heart at the sight of the young woman. On either side of Zelda, 2 more individuals stood. Both were clearly Sheikah by their red eyes and white hair. One was a young woman, perhaps a few years older than Zelda, but wearing an altogether familiar cheeky grin and an even more familiar owl-shaped bow above her head. Link glanced down at Pura with some surprise, who nodded with a grin. He looked at the other Sheikah in the photograph. This one was an unfamiliar man with a shock of messy yet stylish white hair. He was slightly taller than Zelda and had a curved sword attached to his waist. Even in the photograph, his eyes appeared keen and watchful. His eyes fell back to Zelda's face. Her cheeks, he noticed, were tinged with what looked like a blush. He squinted at her face, wondering at the redness of her cheeks. Something about the photograph. Something. Come on, Zelda. No time like the present. Oh, but I'm not. We were just digging and my hair isn't quite. Oh, hush. You look as beautiful as ever. Your knight can tell you, won't you, Linky? What, Pura, that is hardly. Get over here, Link. Are you ready to take it? Smile, everyone. A lighthouse atop a cliff overlooking the sea. A cool, salty breeze playing across his skin. 2 women and a man standing together. The woman in the center was flustered, her cheeks slightly pink, but she smiled nonetheless. He raised the Sheikah sleight hand. And Link gasped sharply and looked around, eyes wide. It was early evening. He was on spirit. Pura was by his side, and he faintly heard him say his name. She was frowning up at him, concerned. Linky? Are you Robbie? He is the one in this photograph. Link's voice cracked slightly, and he swallowed heavily. Well, yes, I just said that. He lives up near Akala now, in an old lighthouse that he turned into his lab. I think he's been studying guardians and how to make weapons that are more effective against them. You should probably visit him sometime. Maybe if you end up near Death Mountain? Linky, are you sure you're okay? You look a little... A lighthouse by the sea. Pura frowned at him, pursing her lips. Yes, the one in the photograph. We had gone there because we heard there was a Sheikah shrine that had just been discovered there. I heard you and Princess Zelda were in the area, visiting Death Mountain. And I knew she could never pass up the opportunity to see something new that we'd found. So I sent you 2 a message to join us. He looked back down at the photograph, now able to see the lighthouse, though distantly. He was sure that he hadn't noticed that while looking at the picture initially. At least, he didn't think that he had. Linky? Pura reached out, touching his calf with her childlike fingers. You remembered something, didn't you? He looked back down at her, and after swallowing again, nodded slowly. I took the photograph. She clapped her hands together in joy. That's great! Keep looking at those photos. Maybe some more of your memories will come back. Just like Impa thought, actually. She made a face, as if she didn't like the idea of her sister being right about something. Still, when you see her, you should mention that you were looking at my picture when you had your first memory. I'm not sure when I'm going to be getting back to see her. But she didn't tell you? Pura's face lit up with a mischievous grin. The old hag must be getting senile in her old age. She cackled to herself softly. Link waited for her to finish, which she did a few seconds later. She asked that you stop back in Kakariko village. She has something that she wants to give you, and besides, there's a shrine hidden up in the Kakariko hills. It wouldn't hurt to activate that one so you can easily transport back there too. If she wanted to give me something, why not just do it while I was there? Still, Pura made a good point. If there was a shrine near Kakariko, then it might be very useful indeed to activate it, if only to be able to seek Impa's advice while on this journey. She certainly seemed to be the one who knew the most of what he needed to accomplish to defeat Ganon. Pura had not seemed to know much of Zelda's plan in this regard when he asked her during dinner earlier. He agreed to make one more trip to Kakariko village before continuing, as Impa had originally suggested, north to visit the Zora, whoever they were. He bid Pura one final farewell and began the long ride back down the hill to Hateno village. Once he reached the town, he paused at the inn, thinking to stay there one final night. But the sight of the evening crowd in the common area made him rethink the decision. He found that he truly did not want to be around anyone at the moment, especially considering they might have questions about what he and Pura had been doing with the shrine earlier. Instead, he simply gathered up the last of his things that he had left up by his bed, managed to purchase some simple travel provisions, and set out into the evening. He'd eventually made camp in the woods that he'd made camp in on the way to Hateno village. There, He made a small fire and pulled out the small cookpot that Pura had given him, inspired by the photograph of himself cooking. He set out to prepare a simple meal of fruit and vegetables, but he then noticed a large, dark gray truffle growing nearby, illuminated by his fire. Curiously, he approached it, smiling faintly at the memory of Nat and Megan arguing over finding some of these truffles in this forest. He decided to add the truffles to his meal, and was quite satisfied with the end result. After eating, Link spread out his simple bedroll, and for a time he lay there, gazing up at the stars overhead. It was a clear night, with a light breeze causing the trees' leaves to shiver. Nearby, an owl hooted. "Princess Zelda?" His hesitant voice cut through the quiet. "Princess? Can you hear me? Can you speak with me?" Like before, his voice seemed to fall on deaf ears. He received no response to his queries, and felt irritated with himself for even trying. Rolling onto his side, he closed his eyes, trying to sleep. Rest, however, did not come easily that night. After what seemed like hours of tossing and turning, Link finally reached for and turned on the Sheikah slate. The brightness of the screen blinded him at first, causing him to squint in discomfort at the colorful icons that filled the screen. He touched the gallery rune, which brought back up the dozens of photographs left behind on the Sheikah slate. Impa had suggested that they were left there by Zelda, in hopes that seeing them might spark some kind of memory in his mind. Clearly she had been wise to do so, as he believed that just such an occurrence had happened earlier that night, though the memory was little more than vague flashes in his mind. He wouldn't have even known who any of the people were in the memory, had Pura not told him. Still, though, it had been something. The first something since he'd woken the week prior. Link spent a long time looking through the many images on the Sheikah slate. There were many more of him, several of Zelda, and quite a few of the other 4 beings that he'd seen the night before. Something about them seemed vaguely familiar to Link, but no amount of effort on his part awakened any distant memory. At one point, he found a photograph of the 6 of them, himself, Princess Zelda, and the other 4 beings, all wearing similar blue scarves, or sashes. He and Princess Zelda were in the center of the photograph, surrounded by the others around them. A large tan creature with the wide grin stood behind the others, and seemed to be embracing them all at once, which had clearly caused some commotion among the others, based on their positions and shocked expressions. The photograph made Link smile. He certainly could not remember anything about this image, the one in the Sheikah slate, that showed them all together at once. But it warmed his heart nonetheless to see the apparent friends together. It also occurred to him that he thought he might know who the 4 beings were. Mipha, the Zora, Daruk, the Goron, Urbosa, the Gerudo, Rivali, the Rito. The 4 champions that Rome had spoken of. The 4 champions that had traveled with Link and Princess Zelda. The 4 champions whom had perished in the divine beasts when Ganon had broken free. He put the Sheikah slate down, placing it over with the rest of his things. He felt sick to his stomach. Where there had once been 6, now there remained only 1. His heart ached with shame for a failure that he could not even remember. If he had worked harder, could he have stopped their deaths? Could he have stopped the Calamity Ganon? Could he now? The next 3 days passed in a blur for Link. He tried to avoid looking at the photographs in the Sheikah slate, though he did occasionally flip through them, wondering if any other memories would be sparked. None were, and even the one that he had remembered was little more than a fragment of one. As he journeyed back towards Fort Hateno, he spotted again the orange Sheikah Tower near Hateno village. He had considered again going to activate it, but when he scouted it, he saw that several groups of monsters had made camps around its base. He decided to keep moving at this time, though felt some concern over their proximity to Hateno village. The tower was at least a day's travel away from the village, but it was close enough that it could be a viable staging point if they did want to attack. Deciding that there was no immediate danger to the village or roads, the tower was a good way off from the main road, Link left things as they were. With the Sheikah slate, he could always come back to check on the monster's activity from time to time. He certainly didn't know if he could clear all the bokoblins and the moblins by himself, though the story of the hero of Hateno village gave him some pause. Surely he hadn't been alone in that battle, right? As the sun set over the ridge separating the Blatchery Plain from Hyrule Field at the end of his second day of travel, Link made camp just across the Kakariko Bridge, before the land started sloping upward into the mountain pass that led to the village. He had considered turning south to spend the evening at the Dueling Peak stable, but decided that the additional hours of travel that would be required wasn't worth it. That evening, he managed to shoot a rabbit with his bow, so he even ended up well fed before the last leg of his journey. Mid-afternoon on the third day brought Link under the wooden arches into the village of Kakariko. He felt the villagers' eyes on him as he climbed down from Spirit's back and led them through the village. A couple of them greeted him, and one lady tried getting him to shop at her clothing shop, but he pressed on as politely as he could. Finally, he reached the bottom of the hill, where a familiar pair of Sheikah men stood guard over the wooden bridge that led to Impa's home. "Welcome back, Link," Kato called, raising a hand in greeting as Link approached. Dorian greeted Link as well, though he was more reserved than Kato's. Link found that he enjoyed the presence of these two men, after having spent some time in their presence during his last visit. Dorian, he'd found out, was the single father of two little girls after his wife had passed away long prior. Kato had been married, but it sounded to Link that some kind of disagreement had resulted in their separation. "Kato? Dorian?" Link said, nodding to each of the older men. "Is Lady Impa available to speak?" I was informed that she wished for me to speak to her again, before continuing on. After a long, pregnant pause, Dorian said, "She told us that she expected you to come back soon, and to allow you to see her whenever you arrived." "I'll have someone take your horse to the inn." Kato stepped up, taking Spirit's reins from Link. "I am assuming that you'll be staying with us tonight." Link glanced up towards the sky, where the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, and nodded at Kato gratefully. He began up the wooden bridge suspended over the small moat that seemed to surround Impa's home. When he reached the top, he noticed that Paya was on her hands and knees next to the door leading inside, scrubbing or maybe polishing the wooden floor. "Hello, Paya." When she heard his voice, she gasped sharply, leaping to her feet. Oh, Master Link. I didn't know you were coming back." She paused and her face seemed to turn even redder. "Today, I mean. Grandmother said that you might be back soon, but I didn't know you would be back today." Link wasn't quite sure what to make of Paya. From his perspective, she seemed to have a great deal of difficulty speaking around others, and he wondered if she struggled with anxiety on top of that. She was charming in her own way, however, and always seemed to be hard at work on some kind of project. "I just came from Hateno village. Pura told me that your grandmother wanted me to stop here again." "Oh, you mean my Aunt Pura?" Her face lit up some, and she stood up a little straighter. "I spent the summer with her 5 years ago. We write each other. She can be eccentric at times." Link couldn't help himself and laughed at this. Paya, in turn, looked somewhat mortified, ducking her head. Her blush reached the tips of her pointed ears. He cleared his throat, feeling somewhat embarrassed by her reaction. "Yes, I think eccentric should about cover it." Despite the awkwardness of the moment, they both shared a slight smile before she announced, a little more loudly than he thought necessary, that she would go in and make sure that Impa knew of his arrival, and that he was welcome to wait in the audience chamber in the meantime. When they entered the house, however, both of them were surprised to find Impa already seated on a pillow on the floor, a tray with 2 cups of steaming tea beside her. The old Sheikah gave him a knowing smile and a wink before looking at Paya.
"Paya, please retrieve the package that I brought for Link."
She motioned to the other pillow across from her. and Link dutifully sat down after removing his sword and shield, laying to the side. Paya hurriedly went up the stairs to do as she had been told. Impa watched the girl go with a fond expression before looking back at him. She fixed him with an even stare, lifting the cup of tea to her lips, sipping at it softly. Finally, when she lowered the cup, she spoke.
I trust you saw my sister? Did she restore your Sheikah slate back to working order?
Link pulled the Sheikah slate from his belt and activated the gallery rune before turning it to show her. I found the photographs. Is that what you, or the princess, meant to help me regain my...
Oh.
Impa fixed her eyes on the screen, setting her tea down with suddenly trembling fingers. She reached out and took the Sheikah slate from him, gazing intently at it. He saw tears at the corners of her eyes, and he was grateful when Paya came down the stairs a few moments later, carrying a package wrapped in brown paper and tied with a piece of twine. "Grandmother?" Paya said, concern laced through her voice. She knelt on the ground beside Impa, placing a hand on the older woman's shoulder. "Oh, is that the..."
"Yes, dear, that is Princess Zelda."
Impa's voice was heavy with emotion, and Link fixed his eyes on the wooden floor between them. "She's so beautiful." Paya, oddly, glanced toward Link when she said this. "Oh, and there is Master Link? And another one of Master Link?" Link felt his face redden slightly at this. It wasn't lost on him that there were quite a few photographs of him in the Sheikah slate. He assumed that was just because the princess had been the bearer of the Sheikah slate at the time, and since he was always with her, he just ended up being in many of her pictures. After a few more moments of looking at the pictures, Impa requested privacy for her and Link, and Paya dutifully went back outside, presumably to continue cleaning the deck as she had been doing when he arrived. Impa cleared her throat. Then he finally looked back up to meet her eyes. Her eyes looked red, but any signs of the painful emotions she had felt upon seeing the photographs were otherwise gone. She drank her tea again and looked at him patiently, apparently waiting for him to speak. Link, in turn, took his cup of tea, taking a sip of it. It was warm and pleasant, not at all like the awful Garuda brew that Telma had given him. He did not immediately say anything either, feeling comfortable in the silence that stretched between them. Finally, Impa did speak.
"Have they assisted with your memory loss?"
He wasn't sure how to answer that. He had remembered something, yes, but the other things that he'd felt when looking at the photos were far worse than not remembering anything at all. He still remembered next to nothing, but now he knew that he had failed all the smiling people in those photos. "I remembered something, a fragment." He grimaced slightly and looked away. Nothing of substance or use.
"Link."
Her voice was firm, drawing his eyes back.
"I did not send you to Pura in hopes that you would recover memories that would be useful in defeating Ganon. I doubt there will be much of all useful in memories locked away in your mind. After all, you did not know how to defeat Ganon 100 years ago."
He flinched at that, and something must have shown on his face, for Impa's voice grew sharper.
"Yes, you failed. The princess failed. We all failed. And the kingdom has paid a terrible price for that failure. But you have been given another chance, another opportunity to right the wrong that has befallen Hyrule. Do not be so focused on your failure that you cannot see the hope before you."
His face grew hot, and he still did not meet her eyes. Impa muttered something about youth before taking a long draw on her tea. When she brought the cup back down, she continued in a softer tone.
"I want you to regain your memories for you, as I am sure the princess wished as well. There is much pain in your history, and remembering it will not be at all pleasant. But there is also much joy and laughter. You deserve to have those memories back as well."
It was only one memory, one simple event. For all of the other photographs that I've looked at, I haven't remembered anything. He chose not to reveal the strange pull he felt whenever he saw photos of Princess Zelda. Something about that felt more private.
And that may be all you ever remember.
Impa nodded sagely. His heart sank.
But I do not think so. Given time, I believe you will recover more of your memories. Already these images have helped you, and I would imagine that visiting the places that these were taken at might have even stronger effect.
Link felt a stab of worry at this. Was she suggesting that he go to the locations in each of these photos? He expressed these concerns to her, which only made Impa laugh.
No, fool boy. I do not suggest you try to find each of these places. However, the journey you must take to free the divine beasts is not so different than the one you and Princess Zelda took 100 years ago. You visited each of the different races in Hyrule to see the divine beasts, and that is reflected in these photographs.
She turned the Sheikah slate around to him, to show him an image of a beautiful white stone city, held aloft by stone pillars over a large body of water. He could see some of the strange fishmen and women on the walkways of the city.
Zora's domain, Impa explained. That is where I recommend you go first. It is closest and easiest to reach from here, and I have heard some troubling news from that region recently. I am not sure of its validity, but the divine beast appears to be acting in a strange manner. It is possible that it is related to your awakening, but I am not sure.
He nodded, concerned by the news. When Princess Zelda last spoke to him, she indicated that Ganon did not know of his awakening yet. If he did know now, and what did that mean for the princess? What did that mean for his journey? So, those are Zora, he said finally. Impa gave him a flat look before launching into an explanation that yes, those were Zora, a race of aquatic people that lived at the mouth of the Zora River. She also showed him the Gorons, the large rock-like creatures that lived at the base of Death Mountain. The Rito were the avian people that lived to the west, in the Tabantha frontier. Link was able to guess who the Gerudo were from what little Telma had told him, but Impa informed him of where they lived as well, in the large desert southwest of Hyrule. Sometime later, Impa cleared her throat and pushed the small brown package towards him.
I made this after you left. I apologize that I had to call you back here, but I felt that you should have this.
He took the package, curious. He untied the twine and carefully unwrapped it. When it was unwrapped, he was shocked to see that it was a sky blue tunic, matching the tunic he'd worn in the photographs perfectly. White trim formed simple symbols around the waist and sleeves, which he thought might have represented the royal family and different races of Hyrule, and the trim, likewise, formed what appeared to be a sword that framed the V of the collar. Beneath the tunic was a simple white shirt, with bands of red and green color at the collar and around the waists.
It is the champion's tunic, she said, looking at him intently. Each of you had an article of clothing or ornamentation cut to mark you specifically as Hyrule's champions. Anyone who would look upon you while wearing that would have known who you were and your purpose.
His mouth had gone dry. Distantly, he wondered why she would give him this. He was no champion, was he? In fact, from what he'd been able to ascertain, he no longer even had the one thing that set him apart in the first place. He'd apparently lost the legendary blade in his battle. Impa, perceptive as usual, seemed to know some of his thoughts. I did not believe you ever felt you truly deserved to wear the tunic, even 100 years ago. But you are our champion now, just as you were then. I will not mince words with you. We need you, Link. He looked back up at her, his voice barely above a whisper. How can there be no one else? You hold within you the power to defeat Ganon. Her expression was gentle, but her voice was firm as always. Just as Princess Zelda did all along, so too do you. You are the one chosen by the goddess, as you were in ages past. He fell silent. The stylized words on his tunic almost seemed to mock him. Impa? Yes? What of the sword? She remained silent for several moments, something that Link considered to be a bad sign. The legendary blade has had many names over the years. The Blade of Evil's Bane, the sword that seals the darkness, the Master Sword. Her voice was carefully controlled, but he could tell that this question concerned her. You were chosen by it, and it did choose you. No one else could have pulled it from its resting place. But where is it? Won't I need it? Again, she hesitated. I
do not know, Link.
His heart sank.
It was damaged in your fight against the Guardians before you fell. I never saw it with my own eyes. That information was relayed to me by the princess. She assured me that it would be repaired in time, and that it would be revealed to you when it again deemed worthy of wielding it.
Link's fist connected hard with the wooden floor beside him, causing pain to shoot up his arm. He didn't care. It will be revealed to me? His voice came out in a hiss between clenched teeth. The weapon that is apparently the key to my victory was broken 100 years ago, and now no one alive knows where it is. The princess won't talk to me. She spoke to me when I woke up, just enough to get me started on this quest, but now when I try to reach out to her, she is silent. I can't. His throat constricted and his eyes closed. I do not know how I can be any more successful now than I was 100 years ago. Impa stood slowly, and he thought that she might be about to walk away. He wouldn't blame her. He sounded like a petulant child even to himself. Almost, he looked to her.
Link.
Her voice was soft, gentle. He looked up. She slapped him hard. He yelped, placing a hand on his cheek and staring up at the old woman with eyes wide.
You complain that Princess Zelda has not spoken to you in the last week. Boy, she has not spoken to me in 100 years. Before you showed up here, I did not even know she could still speak. I did not know if she even still truly lived. Our princess was 17 when the calamity befell Hyrule, and for 17 years she worked every day to awaken her sealing powers that would enable her to combat Ganon. You traveled with her for a short time, but make no mistake. She had been told since she was a little child that she needed to learn to use her powers. She was made to pray to the goddess every day for her powers to wake. And they did not. But they did not, Link.
Her voice raised, cutting him off.
Not until Ganon had risen and destroyed everything and everyone she had ever loved. Not until her closest friends were killed. Not until you fell in battle. Only after that, only then did her power awaken. So before you speak of feeling unworthy, before you complain that you do not have the necessary tools, know that Princess Zelda faced that every day for her entire life. And yet unworthy, untested, having failed a nation, Zelda, our princess, has kept Ganon at bay for 100 years.
She shoved a finger into his face, causing him to lean back some.
In order to give you time to awaken, because our princess still needs her knight at her side.
He stared up at the old woman, shocked by her outburst, and shamed to his core by his own. Every word she spoke was like a knife, cutting pieces of him away to reveal the rot underneath. He felt disgusted by himself.
Now then,
she said after taking a deep breath.
What will you do? Will you turn away? It is, of course, your choice now, just as it was then.
He stared down at the blue tunic in his hands, and gripped it much tighter now. No.
Link.
He looked up at her, suddenly nervous that she might strike him again.
This journey will get more difficult. I expect the trials you will face to be difficult, more difficult. Even than the ones you faced 100 years ago. Is this something you're willing to do?
More difficult trials than the ones he faced 100 years ago? 100 years ago, he died facing those trials. He took a deep breath, exhaling slowly before he nodded. I am. Impa smiled in a strangely grandmotherly way.
Good.
She eased herself back down onto her pillow, picking up her tea and taking a sip of it. Impa?
Yes, Link?
How did she do it? If what you say is true, how did she keep going? She remained silent for a few moments before smiling.
The princess was strong. She was stronger than anyone had any right to be. Far stronger than anyone, perhaps, gave her credit for.
She paused.
And if you think that this is the first time I have slapped a petulant teenager, then you would be mistaken.
He smiled wryly, rubbing his cheek. You know, I'm not sure if I can be classified as a teenager.
Yes, well, I'm still your elder. That gives me certain rights.
He looked back down at the tunic, running his fingers over the fabric.
You should wear it.
Her voice was gentle, and he met her gaze.
You may not feel worthy, but it will give people hope. Many may not remember you, or what that tunic stood for, but some will. And those, some, will tell others.
I will. Link stepped out of Impa's house, the blue tunic and shirt folded over his arm. When he stepped out, he saw Paya methodically scrubbing one of the wooden banisters. She straightened when she noticed him.
Oh, Master Link.
I was told to tell you that your horse has been seen to, and that the bed is waiting for you at the inn. Her cheeks were red, and it was clear that she had been working hard while he was inside with Impa. Some of her white hair was plastered to the side of her face by sweat. Thank you, Paya, he said, smiling at her. Have a good evening. He began down the bridge away from the house. Master Link? She said hesitantly. He turned back to face her, curious. I couldn't help but to overhear some... Oh. He rubbed the back of his neck, his cheeks growing hot. He had hoped that no one else had overheard them. Grandmother is well known in town for how effective her slaps are. Link stared at Paya for a second, confused, but then his lips split into a grin despite himself. Oh, I can believe it. He rubbed his cheek. It still felt a little tender, and he wondered if there would be a palm mark visible on it. I've certainly been on the receiving end of a few in my time. Paya, for a moment, seemed to be speaking easily. She wasn't looking right at Link. Instead, she was looking to the distance. A small smile played across her lips. Somehow, I can't imagine you ever doing anything to earn one, he said, looking at the meticulously clean and polished deck. I don't think I've ever seen you not working. Oh! Paya's face suddenly turned a furious red, and she gripped the banister so tightly that it looked like it was the only thing keeping her on her feet. Master Link, that is very kind, but... Link. What? You can call me Link. Really, I'd rather you actually do so. Paya, in that moment, looked quite uncomfortable, and Link worried that he had offended her somehow. She was an incredibly proper woman, very disciplined. He hoped that it was not improper to ask her to drop the master when speaking to him. I will, Link. Paya didn't quite meet his eyes, but it was a start. Thank you. Link turned and began back down the bridge. Have a good evening, Paya. You as well. Link? Link glanced back at her once more, seeing that she was watching him as he walked away. When she saw him looking back, however, she squeaked and quickly began polishing the banister again. Chuckling to himself, he continued on towards the inn, eager for the warm food and bed within.